Hello, welcome to a sunny book nook, and today I'm going to be recommending books to you. I put up a little question thingy on my Instagram story asking people to send me either their name or a prompt for me to recommend books accordingly to. I'll probably put timestamps for different people too in the description box if you just want to go to your specific recommendation. But let's just jump right in. The first question that I got, or the first request I got, was from my friend Naina. And she said, well-written and thought-provoking fiction. The book that I would like to recommend for you is The Mars Room by Rachel Kushner. This book is about a woman who used to work at a strip club, but is now spending the rest of her life in prison because she murdered a man who was stalking her. This book does a really good job, I think, of getting into the nitty-gritty realities of the lives of disenfranchised people and young people and people who are incarcerated and sex workers and women who are incarcerated, and the relationship that trans prisoners have with other prisoners they're with. And I think that this book was just really incredibly thought-provoking and angering because you get into the perspectives of prison guards, a teacher who works at the prison, and occasionally some of the peripheral male characters and sometimes other women in the prison. And it was really just heartbreaking, but it made me reframe a lot about what I thought of the world. So I would definitely recommend that to you. My friend at Hannah Enroyd asked for a recommendation of fantasy with a bit of humor or historical fiction. So immediately when I thought of a fantasy with humor, I thought of Foundry Side, which is a fantasy set in a world that is dominated by various merchant houses, and these merchant houses have complete control of this world that we're set in. And we're following this thief character who's this teenage girl who basically whenever she touches any object, she can know how it was coded, because in this world the magic system is like this code-based thing where each object can be programmed to perform in a different way. For example, a wheel can be programmed to spin on its own. And so if she touches that wheel, she hears the wheel's thoughts that are spin, 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 or something along those lines. But this book is, the humor aspect of it is because the main character is very sarcastic and she has a lot of banter with the different characters throughout the book. And it's just a really fun read. The magic system is very interesting, and a historical fiction book that I thought was really funny and a great adventure novel as well is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mkenzie Lee. And this book is set in 17th, 18th century Europe, following this guy who is the son of a duke, but he's a bit of a family disappointment because he is a very big party boy, but he's also bisexual and in love with his best friend and a bit of an alcoholic. So he is also hilarious. He makes really bad decisions, as you might expect, but he basically goes on this adventure where he travels across Europe, because during this time in the 17th, 18th century, sons of aristocrats would go on these grand tours of Europe where they would just travel across Europe and visit all the, cultural sites and stuff. He goes on this tour, his grand tour, with his sister, who wants to be a doctor, but because she's a woman, she, her family and everyone around her is like, no, we hate women. And his best friend, whom he's in love with. And my friend Emily at Books Fight Back, she has a wonderful Instagram account, by the way. You gotta check it out. She wanted a recommendation from me, nonfiction and or middle grade and young adult. So a middle grade novel that I recently read is called Nooks and Crannies, and this is set in Victorian era England. It's a mystery. It's very fun, a good middle grade novel, really solid. Another middle grade recommendation I have for Emily is When the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lin. I read this book when I was in middle school and it completely blew my mind. It's such a beautiful combination of Chinese mythology and folklore with a fantasy plot with an 11-year-old girl main character, I believe. And it's just so beautifully written and so engaging and wonderful. So highly recommend that one. And my final middle grade recommendation is The Girl Who Could Fly by Victoria Forrester. I also read this book when I was in middle school, and this completely changed my life. This was the first kind of somewhat fantasy, more magical realism, I think, book that I read that really engaged me, and I think like kickstarted my obsession with reading, because it follows this girl who can fly, obviously, and she gets sent off to the school for like kids who have weird, interesting abilities, but there's something sinister going on, and it's just so intriguing. She's also asking for nonfiction, and because I know that Emily is such a thorough reader, and I remember having a conversation with her sometime last year talking about, we know that the system is bad, needs to be overhauled, but we were talking about how we didn't really know whether that meant no government or lots of government. The book that I would recommend to her regarding that specifically is Revolution Manifesto, Understanding Marx and Lenin's Theory of Revolution. This book is a collection of essays and then The State and Revolution by Lenin. Half the book is modern theory and the other half is Lenin's writing. And I think it does a really good job of breaking down kind of the historical and scientific analysis of this question that we had. So that's my recommendation for Emily. My friend Thomas at tompatgib wanted, quote, that gay shit, quote. And for this prompt, I have a wide variety of recommendations. I made a whole video about LGBT young adult books, so I'll link that as well. But I think a specific book I would recommend to him specifically is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman, and this is a graphic novel compilation series. It's also a webcomic. The entire story available online for free, so definitely check that out because A, the art is so cute and amazing, and B, the gay love story among the group of gay teenage friends, all set in Britain, with a rugby playing love interest and the other love interest like being also playing rugby or whatever. I think this is really up your alley, tompatgib, because I know that you are or were or hung around a lot of artists, and you also did sports in high school, so the next recommendation prompt I got was from Aditi. She was looking for a book about anything about an issue that isn't talked about a lot, or books set in unusual periods / places. So for a niche interest book, I think that you should check out Sourdough by Robin Sloan. I absolutely love this book. It is so quirky and weird and wonderful. I think that it's a unique premise and setting because it's set in NorCal, tech industry, Silicon Valley kind of vibes. It's about this woman who gets really into making sourdough bread after her restaurant neighbors leave, and she then joins this like tech meets bread group, and it's just very bizarre. And I think that an issue or a thing that's not talked about a lot is kind of the impact the technology industry and the whole like new wave of millennials all working at these backbreaking like 90-hour-a-week jobs have on their like mental health and lives, which this book definitely addresses. My friend at fersiordia fersiordia, I don't know. She asked, I don't know, I'm not the best reader, so if you know something that will keep me engaged. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a book that I think people who don't really read that much would really enjoy because it's very immersive and realistic, but also dramatic, and the stakes are high, but not that high. I don't know, I just think and the writing style is very accessible and readable, and it was just a really quick and easy read, I think. The framing device is interesting because it's about a journalist who randomly gets picked to write a story, which then becomes a autobiography of this really famous Hollywood starlet who was super big in like the 40s and 50s and 60s. She was like the Hollywood golden girl, right? So we get to see from the journalist's perspective the story of her life that Evelyn Hugo, this gorgeous Hollywood starlet, gets to tell. And she goes through kind of like how her like rags to riches stories and all of the 7 husbands that she went through and who ultimately was her actual true love. And this book is just really fantastic, good representation, and just an easy read that I think people who do not read that much should definitely check out. So my friend Mansi wanted a recommendation specialized to her, and I know that she is a voracious reader. And a book that I would highly recommend to her specifically is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. And this book has gotten a lot of hype, the perfect book, I think, for her, because it combines Greek mythology and the gays, and creates a really compelling and interesting story with this unique tone that I think Mansi would really enjoy because we have pretty similar taste. And I loved The Song of Achilles, so you would too, Mansi. At Thomas A. DeGroot wanted a book about 2 gay males falling in love. And for this book, I highly recommend Autobiography by Christina Lauren. It's not about 2 gay males, it's about one bisexual male and a gay dude falling in love. But truly, like, wow, this love story just has my heart. It's so cute. Basically, it's set in Salt Lake City, Utah, and, you know, very Mormon. And this kid, the main character, moved from San Francisco a few years ago, and he's bisexual, but not really out to anyone because he doesn't want the Mormons to descend upon him. But basically, he enrolls in this writing class at his high school, and there's a TA in that writing class who is the son of, like, a really famous LDS guy. I don't know. And he is closeted, but they immediately, you know, have some chemistry, and it basically follows their relationship and the grappling that they both have to do with, you know, like society and families and religion and culture. But ultimately, it's just a really cute gay love story, so highly recommend. At Chell Bird asked for WLW books, Women Loving Women books, and let me tell you, this is my favorite genre of fiction, okay? I'm just going to go through a bunch of books that have 2 girls falling in love in them. So the first one I want to recommend to Chelsea specifically is On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden. And this is a graphic novel. And I want to recommend this specifically to Chelsea because I know she's an artist, and I think she would really appreciate the artistry of this book and the imagination and creativity set in space. And it's just like, it's hard to explain. Like, you just need to read it, honestly. Another lesbian graphic novel that you should check out is Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me by Mariko Tamaki. This book also has beautiful artwork, and it's basically about this girl and her toxic relationship with this other girl and their high school dynamic, basically. Really engaging and beautiful and fun, and highly recommend. Now, another Wolawa book I want to recommend is a fantasy retelling of Snow White / like a fairy tale that's set in a wintry, cold setting. It's called Girls Made of Snow and Glass by Melissa Batterduce. And the main love story is between this girl who is working as a doctor at this castle and the princess of this castle. Another fairy tale love story I would like to recommend is A Fire and Stars by Audrey Coulthurst. And this is about this girl who is a princess marrying the prince of another kingdom, but when she gets to the castle to get married to the prince's sister, they start, having a bit of an interesting relationship, because at first the sister and the princess just do not get along. Enemies to lovers romance, and hate to love romance. It's just very cute. We love to see a butch and a femme fall in love, because butch femme dynamics seem to be pretty rare in fiction for some reason. The last Wolawa story you absolutely need to read is Her Royal Highness by Rachel Hawkins. This book is so fucking cute. It's another enemies to lovers, hate to love romance. I love a good hate to love romance story set in a boarding school in Scotland. Whoa. Basically, this girl is in this kind of on again, off again relationship thing with her best girlfriend, and then she gets her heart broken and she's like, fuck it, I'm gonna go to Scotland to this boarding school of my dreams. And when she gets to the boarding school, she realizes her roommate is a literal princess, like the Princess of Scotland. And she's like, okay, what the fuck? This girl is really mean and prissy and rich, and here I am, the scholarship student from the States. Wow. And then, romance ensues. Very cute. Highly recommend. My friend Kimia said, love romance books, mysteries, and books that make me question literally everything I believe. So, a romance book that I recommend is Vinegar Girl by Anne Tyler. This is a Taming of the Shrew retelling, and it's so funny, and the romance is adorable. It's like one of the very few heterosexual romances that I find endearing, mostly because of the obliviousness of all the characters involved. So there's that. And a mystery novel that I highly recommend would be Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. And this is more of a thriller than a mystery, but there is like a mystery element to it, of course. And this is really gruesome, but I think it will make you question everything you believe. So, content warnings for literally everything, especially sexual assault and rape and murder and torture. And it's very graphic, but it's also just so terrifying. Another mystery I would like to recommend is I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This book totally screwed with my mind. It's one of those books that, like, once you get to the ending, you're like, hold on a second. And you need to reread it, because the framing that happens in the last few pages, like, totally restructures what the book is even about. And it's just so interesting. At Erika Peterson wanted some queer romance realistic fiction. All right, so here we go again. A queer romance realistic fiction that I would recommend is Miseducation of Cameron Post, set in the 90s, following the coming of age of a girl who ends up getting sent to conversion therapy camp because of her super conservative Christian aunt. Actually, I don't know if that is considered romance, but it's definitely queer. So yeah, there's that. A truly queer romance, though, I think, would be Leah on the Offbeat by Becky Albertalli. Definitely realistic fiction, just like a light, fluffy young adult read with some themes that are a bit heavier throughout, but not that serious. Like, think Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, because it's a sequel to that book, by the way. Not that you have to read that book to read this book. They're just kind of set in the vaguely same universes. Anyway, yeah, those vibes. So if you've seen the movie or read that book and you thought it was okay or you liked it, definitely check this one out. My friend at Haley.stanks asked for anything YA. Let me go on Haley's Goodreads to make sure I'm not recommending her something that she's already read. Geekerella. I think that you would enjoy this book because you liked Eliza and Her Monsters and other contemporary YA fiction that I've also read. And Geekerella kind of feels in the same lines. It's very funny and lighthearted. This book is basically like a Cinderella retelling, but in like the fandom sense. Basically, this girl, she is like super nerdy and super into this basically like Star Trek, Star Wars kind of stand-in, and there's this con that happens every year and she like gets tickets to go, and it's very fun. Okay, I think you would like it. My friend Grace Who asked for literally anything, fiction, philosophy, etc. Okay, Grace, here's a book that I think you should read. You should read Severance by Ling Ma, because I think that you would really enjoy the themes that this book touches on. It's basically set in a world where this global epidemic is going on, and it's caused by some sort of fungal spore that you like breathe in. And basically, this woman is like working at her office job in New York City, and she's like in this relationship, and then shit goes wild, and suddenly she is basically one of the only last surviving people in the city. And this book kind of jumps between timelines. We see her perspective of like growing up and being a child, and her dynamic with her parents and family, because they're all immigrants from China. And we also see her like, you know, moving to New York and her relationship with her coworkers and the other people in her apartment and the guy she ends up dating. And we see her office life, and then how her office life changes and progresses as this pandemic hits New York City. And we also see how, like, in the aftermath of all of this, she's escaping New York City with this like band of people, and it's just very interesting because it examines like global capitalism and corporate America and relationships and memory and nostalgia and family and immigration, all in this really subtextual way. And I think that Grace, who's a very smart lady, would really enjoy this and absorb it in a way. So yeah, that's my recommendation for you. At Amare wanted an autobiography. An autobiography that I'm currently reading is Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton, who was a co-founder of the Black Panther Party. And this book is a autobiography slash memoir, but also a fundamental piece of leftist and Black revolutionary theory. So, highly recommend. My friend Mkenzie wanted Black or lesbian author, something that will make me think and feel. Oh man, the perfect book that fits this recommendation is, Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. Mkenzie, you need to read this book. It follows the lives and narratives of a bunch of Black British women and non-binary people, and one of the first / main characters we follow is this revolutionary Black lesbian playwright, and basically like her rise in the art world and the artistic process at which she got to the point she was. I remember, like, because that was the opening kind of narrative that we were following, because each chapter basically follows a different woman or person, just really grabbed me. And every narrative that followed it was just as good, because we get to see the lives of Black mothers and people who experience like traumatic life events and how that changed them, and a lot of different types of characters and types of relationships, and lots of lesbianism in here. Lots of discussion of race and identity, of course. And this is just such a good book. Of course, it's like critically acclaimed, won the Man Booker last year. Just very good. So highly recommend. At engiewrong wanted something worth buying and keeping on my shelf for years to come. And for this, I would have to say, literally any book by Toni Morrison. Her work is just so immersive, imaginative, groundbreaking, mind-blowing, timeless. Yeah, I think people just need to own and read and absorb Toni Morrison's work. At kavyavjain responded saying, something thought-provoking that will inspire some self-work about racism, patriarchy, etc. A book you believe essential for privileged Asian Gen Xers to read. And for this, I must recommend Minor Feelings by Kathy Park Hong. I recently read this book, and I'm sure if you follow me on my personal Instagram, you've already seen my constant ranting of it on my stories. Such a necessary read for, like Kavya was saying, privileged Asian Gen Zers to read. It's a collection of essays that examinations of critical race theory, part memoir, part reflections on her own writing career as a poet and her experience of being a woman of color in the 90s and early 2000s and stuff in these literary art spaces. It talks about relationships between women of color and the dynamics that go on. I just think every Asian young person needs to read this book. It'll make you feel so much too. I'm gonna make a video about essential nonfiction that I think everyone who wants a better world should read, and I will be reading excerpts from these different books too, so watch out for that. At daniellezhxng wanted recommendations of Walla books again. Woo! Fantasy, anything really. All right, so a Walla women-loving women fantasy novel that I think Danielle should read is The Midnight Lie by Marie Rutkowski. I don't know. This book is a fantasy that is set in this world where your life is determined by your kith. There's full kith, half kith, and a middle class. Half kith or lower kith people all live on one side of this wall, and on the other side of this wall are all the rich party going rich people, and they all live on this little island. And the thing is, what's weird is that no one knows the history of this island. No one knows why there's a wall. No one knows why people have their caste settings. No one knows why there's the different structures and systems are there. An inciting event of this bird coming in from the other side of the wall basically shakes this world up, and we follow this main character who ends up getting thrown in prison, and this other person and her end up having a bit of a relationship, a bit of a romance, a bit of a a lesbian situation going on. So yeah, that I think is a book that combines the Walla and fantasy. Oh, and of course Foundry Side too. Foundry Side also, which I recommended earlier for another person's suggestion, is also a fantasy with a female romance, so recommend that as well. My friend Katie Shaw wanted a recommendation for her, and for her, this is a tough one because I have told Katie the entire plots of lots of books that I've read just because I felt the need to tell them to someone. Oh wait, you should read We Regret to Inform You by Ariel Kaplan. This is about the college application process, which you're done with at this point, so, you know, this is not stressful. But basically, this girl is like a straight A student. All of her college decisions come back, and she didn't get into any of her schools, even though, like, objectively, she should have gotten into basically all of them. So she realizes then that someone, like, hacked the system and her application so that it looked like instead of being a straight A student, she, like, got C's and D's and stuff. So there's that. It's a really cute little young adult book, and I think that you would enjoy it. My friend Haley Zink was asking for a young adult fantasy or general femme sci-fi. All right, femme sci-fi. You gotta read N.K. Jemisin's The Fifth Season. This book just blew my mind. It won the Hugo Award, which is like the big sci-fi award. The world is just, it's just so good because basically it's set in this post-apocalyptic world where the earth has undergone so many different natural catastrophes that at this point the world has basically separated itself into different communities of survivalists, essentially. Highly recommend. My friend Christine asked for colonialism / sketchy gov stuff books. You have to read This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein. That book is about like the climate change crisis, but more than that, it's all about sketchy government shit, like, and sketchy corporation shit, and how colonialism and corporations that are killing indigenous groups and people across the world are destroying the earth. So highly recommend. My friend at joycexjiang wanted some recommendations, and for her, I think that she should read The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This book is about the daughter of an immigrant, and I know that Joyce and I are both daughters of immigrants, so there's that. And it's about her like coming of age and her relationship with her mother and with herself and her body and her sexuality. She is basically going through a lot of shit and has a lot of like emotional and mental health issues. She then basically discovers her self-expression through poetry, and specifically slam poetry. Oh wait, also Sarah Abbas. You would love this book too. You need to read The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. You guys would both enjoy this book as daughters of immigrants, and that complicated relationship you have with a mother who can never really understand you because of the cultural divide, but who also wants the best for you, but also doesn't really know how to do that. And it's just wonderful. And it's all written in verse too, so it's a very quick and like easy read. It's easy in that it's like shorter and the writing is like digestible, but not easy in that like the stakes are low or that the themes that it deals with are not important, because they are. That's going to be the end of my recommendations for you guys for today, at least. This is definitely part one to a multi-part series that I'm going to be making of my recommendations for you. Let me know what other topics you want book recommendations for, and I'll be happy to make this video again. Like, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that bullshit, and bye!